In episode 4, we're going to fast forward 30 years into Yennefer's timeline, where the allure of being a mage has completely worn off. She's escorting a queen and her newborn baby daughter back to their castle, and the queen is complaining about the king and how she's really just used to be a vessel and nothing more, and how she's kind of envious of Yennefer and her freedom. But then out of nowhere, their caravan is attacked. When Yennefer gets out to investigate, she sees an assassin along with this spider-like beast who has taken out all of the king's men. Yennefer quickly portals to another location, but the assassin follows her. So they keep playing this cat and mouse game where Yennefer will portal to one place and the guy follows her. The whole time Yennefer is trying to figure out how he's tracking her. There must be something that the king gave the queen, because Yennefer lets the queen know that the king sent this assassin to take her out. But as they keep portaling and portaling, the guy keeps following her. Eventually it looks like Yennefer just leaves and it's just the queen and the assassin, and the queen says, "Take my baby as a sacrifice, but leave me, and tell the king that I can get him an heir to the throne." But the assassin slits her throat, and then sends the tarantula-like beast onto the baby. But that's when Yennefer uses her magic, because she didn't actually leave, to kill the beast. She then grabs the baby and tries to portal to another location, but the assassin sends a dagger, and when Yennefer arrives at the new location, which is on a beach, she finds out that the dagger not only pierced her, but also killed the child. So Yennefer is sitting down on the beach and talking to this dead child about how she's not really missing much, not getting the chance to live her life. And if there's one thing that her mom was right about, it's the fact that they are just used as vessels because she's a female. She then buries the child. And then there's Geralt, who has shown up in yet another town to kill another beast. And one of the townspeople is in the tavern telling the tale of Geralt of Rivia, saying how it looks like he's dead. He's swallowed by this huge monstrous thing that they hired him to kill. And another person that's there is the bard, Jasker. And he's writing all this information down for more songs, because him singing about the Witcher has done wonders for his career. But he also doesn't believe that the Witcher is dead. And sure enough, Geralt walks in the tavern covered in blood looking for his payment. Jasker then pulls Geralt aside and says, "You know, I've made you pretty famous. Normally I would charge anywhere from like 5 to 10%. But instead, I just need a little tiny favor." He's going to this wedding ceremony and he needs protections because he slept with a lot of their wives. And he wants to make it out of there alive. So the two shower up and head on off to the ceremony where princes will make their case for why they should marry the queen's daughter. And this is another example of the timelines aren't matched up, because the queen is Queen Calante and her daughter is Ciri's mother. Now the bard doesn't want to cause any unwanted attention to his bodyguard that night, so he has him dressed like a normal person. But as soon as Geralt enters the room, he gets recognized by Musak, who was the sorcerer in Sintra the night that Nilfgaard attacked. But when we meet him, he's not working for the queen yet. He's just there to see the whole thing go down. And Musak and Geralt have a history. They know each other from way back in the day. He takes Geralt aside and fills him in on all the details of what's going on, who's the favorite to marry Princess Pavetta, and how they're probably not getting out of there before dawn. Now, the favorite is the nephew of Cersei's grandfather, Iced. And Iced is very good with a sword, but he's been rejected by Queen Calante 3 times for a marriage proposal after her original husband died. The Witcher then needs to cut the conversation short because the bard has gotten into some hot water with another king who recognizes him from leaving his wife's chambers. So the Witcher shows up and says, "I know he's got a recognizable face, but it's not him because he's a eunuch." And while Jasker doesn't really appreciate that narrative, it works, and, he's healthy. Calante then shows up in a suit of armor covered in blood. She walks over to her daughter Pavetta, but Pavetta is pissed off. She doesn't want to go through this ceremony. And Calante says, "Do you think I really wanted to marry your father? Look, after you get married, you can sleep with whoever you want. That's the way this works." So they start singing and dancing, and at one point during the night, 2 of the guys start arguing over killing a manticore, and neither of them believe that the other has done it. So while this pissing contest is going on, somebody alerts Queen Calante to the fact that there's a Witcher in the room, and she says, "Witcher, can you settle this debate? Which one of them is right?" And he says, "Well, neither of them." One of them insults the Witcher by saying, "Well, what does he know? He's just the butcher of Blaviken." And the bard knows that he can't stand that insult, but instead of losing his cool, the Witcher says, "Maybe they came across a different species of manticore." Calante then cracks up and says, "Well, why don't you tell us about the time that you killed all of those elves?" Because according to the bard's song, that's what happened, even though in reality it didn't, and Geralt comes clean saying, "No, the real story is I got my ass kicked." Calante says, "Any man who is willing to paint himself in the shadow of failure will make for more entertainment than anyone else in here." And then she invites the Witcher to come sit next to her. Calante asks him what he's doing there, and he tells her the situation with the bard. She then mentions how she will also want his services if blood ends up getting spilled that night, but he says, "I'm not for sale. I'm not a bodyguard. I'm just helping that idiot out." And she likes the fact that he's standing up to her. She says, "I could just order you to do it." He says, "You could if I was one of your servants, but I'm not." Their conversation is cut short when the princes start making their pitches, and the first one to go is Nilfgaard. But they just keep getting mocked and made fun of. And the worst of it comes from Queen Calante, who basically says that Nilfgaard is a shit stain on the continent. So more people start making their claims, but the conversation between Calante and Geralt continues. She wants to know why there are so few Witchers around anymore. And it's because it's no longer possible for them to create more of them, ever since the death of a guy named Kara Morhan. He then asks her, why do you risk your life on the battlefield when you can just sit in a tower and let other people die? And she says, well, there's something nice about killing monsters, is there not? And the conversation is turning a little flirtatious when she says, don't you think we make quite a team? But then all of a sudden somebody bursts on into the door that wasn't invited. And they're dressed in a suit of armor and apologize for the intrusion, but he wants to make his case for why he should get Pavetta's hand in marriage. And the big issue with him is he's not real royalty. He's a lord who's named Lord Urcheon of Erlenwald, but he doesn't really actually have any royal claim. And the fact that he doesn't have any claim is insulting to Kalante. Another thing that's insulting is the fact that he's still wearing his helmet. He says, well, I can't take it off. I promised an oath that I wouldn't take it off until the sounding of the 12th bell. But Iced, Cersei's future grandfather, doesn't really buy that, so he comes over and knocks the helmet off to reveal that this guy is half human, half hedgehog. And as soon as everybody sees that, they're taken aback, and Kalante orders the Witcher to kill him. But he says, no, I'm not killing him. He's not a monster, he's cursed. So Kalante orders everybody else to kill him. And after killing 2 soldiers, he says, I've come to claim what's rightfully mine. Pavetta, by the law of surprise, is mine. Because he saved Pavetta's father one time and was promised the law of surprise. Even after the claim, soldiers keep coming to try to kill him. And it doesn't take long for him to be surrounded, and it looks like he's going to be killed until Geralt comes over and saves him. The two team up and start taking people out, and Iced also joins them because he respects the law of surprise. So it's 3 versus a ton, but the 3 are winning. And that becomes obvious to Kalante, so she orders everybody to stop. Urcheon, or Dooney as he's nicknamed, goes over and says the Witcher's right, I was cursed as a child. And really, his whole life had sucked until the day he saved a king. And when that happened, he chose as payment the law of surprise. And when he found out that the king was going to have a child, he knew that that would be his one day. But he also knew that no woman would love him the way he looked. So he just hid, waiting for the 12th bell to ring so the curse would be lifted, and then he could claim the law of surprise. Now, normally the law of surprise is not a child. It's like a plot of land, a newborn puppy, but in this case, it is a child. But by destiny, the two ended up meeting before he could even claim the law of surprise and falling in love. And now they both want to marry consensually. And Kalante is getting pressure from all over to honor the law of surprise, including from Iced, who says, a life was saved, a debt must be repaid. Geralt doesn't believe in destiny, but does believe in the law of surprise and honoring that tradition. So it looks like she's going to. She puts down her sword and goes over to bless him, but grabs a dagger and goes to stab Dooney. And when she does that, Pavetta screams out. And it's the same scream that we saw from Ciri back in episode 1, but way more powerful. It throws everybody back, and it's as if there's a hurricane going around, and Dooney and Pavetta are at the center of it, and they slowly start to rise in the air. It takes effort from both Geralt and Musak to use their powers to get them down. And this is the first time that Kalante has ever seen her daughter had this power. She knew about it from the family, but it skipped her. Kalante's mother had it, Kalante didn't have it, and until this moment, she didn't think that Pavetta had it. Kalante then makes the announcement that Destiny has spoken, and she is accepting the law of surprise. Iced, in a baller move, stands up next to her and says, and if anybody has a problem with that, you gotta go through me too, because Kalante has accepted my proposal for marriage. Kalante doesn't really put up a fight about it and just says, yeah, so there'll be 2 ceremonies tonight. So Kalante goes to the ceremony with Pavetta blessing both her and Dooney. And when she does so, Dooney turns back into a human. Because when she put her blessing on the relationship, it lifted the curse before the 12th bell. Geralt tries to leave, but Dooney says, no, I can't let you go. You saved my life. I need to give you something. Geralt doesn't want anything, but Dooney persists and he says, fine, I'll do what you did. The law of surprise. And Geralt doesn't really have any intention of coming back and picking this up. But when he said he wanted the law of surprise as payment, Pavetta ends up throwing up. Because by doing so, just like when Dooney did it, Destiny has spoken that he will one day claim Pavetta's child. And we, of course, know this to be Ciri. Musak then goes and asks Geralt to stay because it's obvious that Pavetta doesn't know how to harness her powers. He also wants him to stay because of the law of surprise. The issue with it is Geralt doesn't believe in destiny, and he has no plans on cashing in on the law of surprise. Musak says, whether you believe in it or not, the bond between you and this unborn child is going to be extraordinary. But if you leave and never claim this child of surprise, you're going to unleash true calamity upon all of us. And unfortunately for Musak, that is a risk that Geralt is willing to take. Now, the child, as I said, is Ciri, and she has made her way into those woods and quickly surrounded by a bunch of people that live in there. And these are magical woods. And they're all wanting to know how Ciri got in there. The problem is, she doesn't really remember. They've also grabbed Dara and saved his life. And he wants to know why they're calling her by this fake name, and it's because she reveals to Dara who she actually is, saying, I was told never to reveal who I actually am outside of the castle. When Dara hears who she actually is, he's disgusted because all of his people were slaughtered by her grandmother, Queen Kalante. But Ciri doesn't believe any of it, because that's not the Kalante that she grew up with knowing, even though it's all true. That night, Ciri does have a dream about all of the elves being slaughtered, but is woken up because the people in the woods have told both her and Dara about the water in the woods and how they have to drink it, because everybody that steps foot in the woods is instructed to drink this magical water. And the water has healing properties for those that are pure at heart. But if you have bad intentions entering the woods, you'll be killed off. Dara drinks it and he's fine. And he's encouraging her to do the same, but when she does so, nothing happens. So they bring her to the source of the water and have her drink that. And when she does, she's immediately transported into a desert with one single tree. And the tree is asking her, "What are you, child?" Now, finally, there's the issue of the person who is chasing her from Nilfgaard. He, along with his men, headed back to Sintra and are looking for the body of Queen Calante, which they discover. One of them ends up eating a piece of her body and then getting his guts ripped open, where the mage, who is the niece of the head of the Brotherhood of Sorcery, is able to discern where she is. She's in the woods. They also know it's not easy to get in there. Thank you for watching this recap. If you do not see the next one up in the corner right there on the end screen, don't worry, it'll be up shortly. Please consider following the channel. That'd be cool. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. And if you don't, there's a thumbs down button for a reason.